All right, let's talk. Because if you're here, there's a good chance you've had this moment before. You're not broke. Your paycheck isn't terrible. You're not reckless. You don't feel irresponsible. And yet, every time you check your account, it feels thinner than it should. You look at the number and think, this doesn't add up. You scroll back through transactions, almost like you're looking for a smoking gun. Something obvious, something dumb, something you can point at and say, ah, that's it, but there's nothing dramatic. Groceries, gas, lunch, a couple subscriptions, a few Amazon orders you barely remember making. And that's what messes with you, because none of it feels irresponsible. None of it feels like a mistake. It all feels normal. So you close the bank app, shrug it off, and tell yourself you'll be better next month. Most people live in that exact loop for years, not because they're bad with money, but because the way money quietly drains now looks nothing like the mistakes we were warned about.
Here's the thing most people don't realize. The financial advice we absorbed growing up was built for a cheaper version of America. Food was cheaper relative to income, housing took up less space in your paycheck, convenience was occasional, not constant, subscriptions barely existed. So the habits you learned weren't stupid, they just didn't age well, and nobody really explained that part. If this is your first time here, I'm Oliver, coming to you from sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. I've spent years digging into personal finance, wealth building, and how normal people like you and me accidentally throw money away every single month. If you're someone who works hard, pays your bills on time, and still feels like your money evaporates, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out.
Let's talk about food first, because that's usually where the confusion starts. Not fine dining, not $300 steakhouse nights, just food. You grab Starbucks on the way to work, Chipotle or Sweet Green for lunch. Take out a couple of nights because you're tired. DoorDash shows up on Friday because, honestly, you've had a week. None of that sounds crazy. In fact, it sounds like a normal adult life. And individually, each decision makes sense. You're busy, you're tired, you don't feel like meal prepping on Sunday like it's a second job, so you spend. But here's what sneaks up on people. Food spending doesn't hurt because of the big meals. It hurts because it's tied to relief. Relief from hunger, relief from stress, relief from having to decide. And when spending solves a problem, your brain doesn't register it as spending. It registers it as maintenance. You're not thinking, I'm wasting money, you're thinking, I'm getting through the day. That's why people genuinely believe they don't spend much on food, even when the total says otherwise. And food prices didn't just go up loudly. They crept up quietly. A sandwich that used to be $9 is now $14. Delivery fees that didn't exist are suddenly normal. Tips are expected. Taxes stack. So you're not ordering more, you're just paying more for the same routine. And routines are expensive when you stop questioning them. Convenience is the next big one. Convenience used to be something you paid for occasionally. Now it's the default setting. Uber instead of driving. Instacart instead of the grocery store. Amazon instead of waiting. Streaming instead of ownership. And again, none of this is immoral or careless. It exists because it works. But here's the psychological shift that changed everything. When convenience removes friction, spending stops feeling like a choice. You don't decide to buy, you just tap. No pause, no reflection, no moment where your brain says, do I actually want this? And when spending becomes effortless, it becomes invisible. You're not impulsive, you're just uninterrupted. That's a big difference, because friction used to be your financial defense system. Now it's gone. And without friction, money flows out in small, forgettable ways that add up way faster than people expect. Subscriptions deserve special attention, because this is where a lot of responsible earners quietly bleed money. Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, Apple Storage, fitness apps, news apps, that free trial you forgot about. Each one felt small when you signed up. Each one felt reasonable. And maybe you even told yourself you'd cancel later. But here's what subscriptions
exploit perfectly. Inertia. Once something is recurring, your brain stops treating it like an active decision. There's no pain point, no moment of resistance, just a slightly lower balance every month. And canceling takes effort. Logging in, remembering passwords, navigating menus that are clearly designed to slow you down. So you tolerate it. You tell yourself it's not worth the hassle. And month by month, tolerance compounds. Not dramatically, just quietly. Cars are another huge one, especially in America, because here a car isn't just transportation. It's identity, it's progress. It's a signal that you're doing okay. So when you upgrade, it doesn't feel like overspending. It feels earned. You're not thinking about the payment as a constraint. You're thinking about comfort, safety, reliability, and those are valid considerations. But here's what most people don't sit with long enough. A car payment doesn't just cost money, it costs options. It locks in a monthly obligation that quietly dictates how much freedom you have elsewhere, how much you can save, how much risk you can take, how long you could go if your job changed. Because once that payment exists, it becomes non-negotiable. And since almost everyone has one, it feels normal, even when it's quietly limiting your entire financial life. Lifestyle creep is another one people misunderstand. It's not about greed. It's not about keeping up with the Joneses. It's just your standards adjusting faster than your awareness. When your income goes up, your spending doesn't jump overnight. It stretches. Slightly nicer groceries, a better apartment, more convenience, less price sensitivity. Nothing feels excessive. Everything feels appropriate for where you are now. And that's the trap. Your brain compares your current lifestyle to your past, not to what your money could be doing long term. So every upgrade feels justified. But eventually your higher income just becomes a higher baseline. You didn't get richer, you just got more expensive. There's also the emotional side of spending that people don't like to admit. Stress spending, reward spending. I deserve this spending. After a long workday, money becomes a shortcut to relief. A rough week turns into takeout. A draining job turns into upgrades. A stressful month turns into purchases you barely remember making. You're not chasing luxury, you're chasing rest. And that's what makes it so hard to criticize yourself, because denying relief when you're already tired feels cruel. But here's the quiet cost. When spending becomes your main coping mechanism, money stops being a tool for building the future and starts being a tool for surviving the present. And surviving is expensive. Another subtle mistake, confusing income with security. You earn decent money, so you assume you're okay, that if something happened, you'd figure it out. That next paycheck will fix things. But income isn't the same as margin. Margin is what absorbs shocks. It's what turns emergencies into inconveniences. And when your income is fully allocated, even to reasonable things, there's no margin left. So every surprise feels bigger than it should. Every unexpected bill feels personal, not because you're failing, but because there's no buffer. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of these habits formed when they actually made sense. Convenience used to be cheaper. Food used to take up less of your income. Subscriptions were rare. Housing wasn't this expensive relative to wages. So the advice you internalized wasn't wrong. It's just outdated. The environment changed, the habits didn't. And that mismatch is why so many people feel stuck, despite earning more than they ever have. People also expect financial progress to feel dramatic. Like there's supposed to be a moment where everything clicks, where saving feels exciting, where discipline feels rewarding. It usually doesn't. Real progress feels boring, quiet, slightly uncomfortable. It looks like saying no without announcing it, choosing the slower option, letting money sit instead of turning into something immediately. And that's hard in a culture built on instant feedback. Spending gives you something now. Saving gives you nothing you can touch. So your brain naturally favors the former, especially when you're tired. That's not a character flaw, it's biology. This is where compounding really matters. Not flashy investing, behavioral compounding. Small decisions repeated over time quietly shape your financial reality. A little more convenience here, a little more tolerance there. A few habits you meant to revisit but never did. Individually harmless, collectively powerful. That's why two people with the same income can feel wildly different levels of financial stress. It's not intelligence, it's normalization. So if you've been listening to this and thinking, yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing, I want you to hear this clearly. clearly. That reaction isn't failure. It doesn't mean you're careless. It doesn't mean you've failed. It usually means you've been living on autopilot in a world that made autopilot expensive. I believe this is an awareness. Most people never get this far. They stay stuck in confusion, telling themselves they'll deal with it later, assuming the problem is discipline or income or timing. They never pause long enough to notice what's actually happening. You did, and that matters more than people think. Because the goal here isn't to become extreme with money. It's not to turn your life into a constant optimization project. It's not to stop enjoying things or to feel guilty every time you spend. The goal is alignment. It's being able to open your banking app and recognize the story your money is telling. It's understanding why certain habits feel harmless but quietly cost you momentum. It's realizing that feeling broke doesn't mean you are. It usually means your money is working against you instead of with you. And once you see that, you don't need dramatic changes. You don't need rules. You don't need willpower. You don't need to overhaul your lifestyle. Small awareness shifts tend to change behavior on their own. You start hesitating where you didn't before. You start asking different questions. You start choosing a little more intentionally, not perfectly, just honestly. And over time, that adds up. Not into flashiness, not into instant freedom, into something quieter, less confusion, less background stress, more breathing room. And that's usually what people actually want when they say they want more money. Not wealth, not status, just the feeling that their finances finally make sense. Sit with that. No pressure to act today. No urgency to fix everything. Clarity has a way of doing the work for you if you give it space.